Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest, I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Tenicia Moulden. Hi, Tenicia.
Hello, everyone.
It's so good to have you on this podcast. So, Tenicia, we met at a NABO event, National Association of Women Business Owners. It was actually in June, where we celebrated the 50th anniversary of NABO. And we got to talk, and I heard what you do, and I was like, wow, you have to be on my podcast because I think our listeners have to learn about this subject. But I'm going to introduce you first so our listeners understand what it is, and then we'll start talking. So you are known as the entrepreneur's lawyer. So now listeners, okay, lawyer. So what's so exciting about that? Well, let me tell you. So you are the entrepreneur's lawyer. You're an attorney and business strategist, helping entrepreneurs build businesses, protect brands, and own everything they work for. So this is a very important point that not a lot of us as entrepreneurs think about or put attention on. So that's definitely something that we're going to have that conversation. And with over a decade of experience in law, brand support, and business growth, you specialize in guiding first generation and growth stage entrepreneurs to create lasting wealth and legacy. Your passion is making complex legal and business strategies simple, actionable, and empowering. That's amazing, Tenicia.
That is amazing. I want to meet this person.
I know, right? That's what happens all the time when you read. But I met her, so she's right here in front of us. That's awesome. So let's talk about protecting the brand. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Protect your brand. So this is one of the things, like you said, most entrepreneurs don't think about. They sometimes they don't think of themselves as the brand. What I like to say nowadays, when we're building a business, we have to think about building a brand. That is how we stand out. And to protect that brand, you are protecting your business. And I say when I'm working with my clients, we protect the brand at all costs because that is your revenue. That is your lifeline. It's like protecting your business, but the brand can stand on its own. This is what attracts people to do business with you. So you want to make sure that you are protecting what you're creating. And most of the time, the brand is so I guess close to the CEO. I kind of like to say the CEO brand that is so authentic and you put so much into it that you don't want someone else to duplicate it, nor can they duplicate yourself. But sometimes they try to take elements of that, but they can never duplicate it. That's why you need to protect it and make sure that because that's your revenue generating engine. And in this day and age, to stand out from the competition, I don't believe anyone has competition, but if you have a brand, you don't have competition, right? So you protect that at all costs.
Absolutely. So what consists of a brand? Like, let's say in the service industry, you have a client that is an entrepreneur in the service business. Or service profession, like, professional services, right? So what would consist of the brand?
Oh, okay. I love this question. So there's like three elements, three things that I look for a great brand. And it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. I think every brand should have these three elements to be relevant. If you have a product or service that is relevant, that is up to date, that is bringing value. Second is exclusive. What are you providing that is exclusively your secret sauce? And then the other one is distinct. What makes you stand out from the crowd? It could be your colors. It could be what you wear. I have some clients that walk around with bow ties. That's their signature thing. I met a brand the other day that had this like blush color, and both of them were walking around with their blush jackets on. I'm like, oh, that's distinguished. And I asked them what they do because I just knew they were together, because who else is walking around with blush jackets on? But these are the three elements that I look for. And when I see those things, I am like after them to say, are you working with an attorney? Are you working with a lawyer? I would love to have you as a client, because I see that you're relevant. I see that you're distinct. I see that you're exclusive.
Right. So then how do you protect that? What do you do in order to protect it?
So it depends on there. And this is going back. I know you're all in systems, but I like numbers. So numbers, and I keep these things in my head. So how do you protect it is by understanding what your intellectual property is. So depending on what your intellectual property is, you go about putting the systems in place to protect that. So first, understanding, we do IP audits, so intellectual property audits, so our entrepreneurs can know what they actually that needs protection. So there are four areas of intellectual property. You have your trademarks, which I think is the most popular, people know about, copyrights, patents, and trade secrets. So knowing what these four areas are, what you have underneath in your arsenal of that needs protection, will identify what needs protection and what path that we take for those protections. Oh, and I forgot one last thing. The one thing that does, contracts. Contracts, that's probably like the fifth thing people don't know. It doesn't necessarily fall under intellectual property, but contracts are really important too.
Yeah, so let's say we have a listener right now that, I mean, our listeners listening to us, and they think, well, how would I know what is really my intellectual property? What advice would you give them?
You would think, talk to us.
Of course, and that's definitely a very good advice, but we always like to give some tips or some, like, let me ask you the different questions. So
Okay.
what would not qualify as your intellectual property? Like, how do you know that this part is not really your intellectual property?
I think intellectual property is really anything the mind that in your mind that you can create. Once it's in your mind, you create it, you have the idea. And once you speak it or write it down, it's intellectual property. That's pretty much how it starts.
Right.
There is no so, but then it comes to a manner of, do you actually own that?
Right.
Did
So
you,
that's my
so
question. Like, how do you, of course, you have the intellectual property. Okay.
yeah.
So I had a bright idea and I executed upon it and I created videos based on it or a course. And then I go and give lectures on it. And then I see my competitor doing the same thing. What can I do?
We would start, part of the process is doing some research to see who actually owns it, if it's already owned, and then going through the process of filing to take ownership of that intellectual property. So going through that process. So first we have to determine whether or not, because sometimes we think we have ideas, but we may have been influenced by what we see out in the world, and we use something because we saw it, and we think that, oh, that's our idea, but really our subconscious just grabbed it because we saw somebody else. Oh, I love that, that saying, and we do it. But part of the process is to do some research, a comprehensive, like as a trademark. So a comprehensive trademark search to make sure we're going through all the US filings for trademark. We're going through all common law, meaning that common law is people that may not have filed, but may have been using that mark or a slogan in their business. You still have they still have rights, and you don't want to impede on those, nor do you want to confuse yourself with someone else anyway. You want to be distinct. So that's the first thing, just researching and making sure that you can use it once you've gotten validated. But just going back to being a business owner, sometimes I think entrepreneurs, the question that you ask is a great question to ask, but I also don't want them to get past generating revenue for their business. Don't get stuck on that, because brands, names, and colors can change.
Right.
Your brand that you're building, or the trust factor that you're building with the community, cannot go away.
Right. So that is your identity as a business.
Yes.
Okay. So what are some of the big mistakes that you see, or big mistakes that you see that business owners or entrepreneurs make by not protecting their brand or protecting their intellectual property?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, they could lose out on revenue or licensing opportunities because they did not do the research first. When I work with brands, one of the things that I say, I like to help them build their business. So we do some coaching and business coaching and business, helping them like grow into their CEO selves. But part of that coaching is helping them validate their offer. And when I say validate, making sure they generate revenue and that they have a brand strategy, that they actually have a brand to protect.
Yeah.
One of the mistakes that I see is sometimes they don't do that part and they jump to trying to trademark something. They jump straight to trademark, and there are always exceptions to the rule. But my next question is, how are we going to monetize that trademark? How do you know that people will be attracted to that mark? Just because you came up to it and you came up with it and you want to own it, that doesn't mean that your potential clients or customers are attracted to it.
That's right.
So that's probably one of the biggest, mistakes that I see them try to do when they come in. That's the reason why I started. I took a step back and added on more brand strategy before we get to that point, so they understand there's a strategic method to going about selecting your trademarks, your copyrights, and also it can be money intensive. I don't want to say expensive, but you to put in to get these marks and file these applications and the fees, the professional fees, and if you have to backtrack, you just kind of wasted money.
That's a very good advice. You have to have it all defined first, and then you can protect. Otherwise, there's nothing to protect. Now, when should a business look at creating a trademark, like actually filing for a trademark and creating a trademark?
Well, if we want to say cut and dry, I usually look at six figures. As soon as they are pretty close or hit 100,000, they've gotten that's some validation. And validation does not necessarily mean revenue. If they've gotten funding, if they've gotten an investor that believes that they have something great, they've gotten validated. So if they've received six figures of validation, whether in sales or an investor, that's the point that I say we need to strongly look at protecting any intellectual property or mark. So if you have a course, should we copyright it? Should we do trades? If we have a bakery, I talked to a what lotion, hair and body, like cream play. I guess I can't think of what it is, but they have a trade secret, the ingredients to their product. I said, so we look and they had made six figures. I said, now is the time you need to put in trade secret program.
Right. What do you do about professional services like a CPA, an accountant, architect? I mean, what do you trademark there? Or maybe you don't.
No, I'm professional services. So slogans, logos, any sayings that you have, as again, the trade secrets being very putting your here coming with the contracts, your non-disclosure agreements, because now what you have is what you have on the inside, your process and systems. That's intellectual property
It
because
is.
people would want to know how the entrepreneur's lawyer, you know, handles intake, for example, because that would make life easier. That's my trade secret on how I handle my intake, how my systems and processes.
It's interesting because that's a question that comes from, I mean, many of our clients have asked us those questions. So obviously we have a confidentiality agreement and non-disclosure, but what they are concerned about is their employees, that the employee is not going to take what they have and get it to their competitor. How do you protect against that?
Contracts. So you have to be very clear in the contracts of the repercussions of such, and also be very clear about not providing all the information to all the people. Only give access to depending on their role, give them the access that they need to complete their task or job. So you have to control the information. Not everybody should have access to everything. And then also be very clear in your contracts, how serious you are about the trade secrets or your processes and system, and they are not to share that. Like that is something, and I don't, when I say, so I would say have the contracts, be have that in place, but also when you're doing reviews, as you're bringing on people, you are going through that contract and also that particular point to say how important it is that you do not share this, and also what the repercussions are, or the consequences. I don't want to say repercussions, the consequences of breaching that
Yeah.
contract. Yeah.
So what are some of the consequences can be?
Well, besides lawsuit, you can get sued, you can get fired.
Okay. So does that, having a contract like that, would that then jeopardize the at-will status, or is that it's not an employment contract, it's a contract to basically maintain confidentiality?
Yeah, so it's the same. It's just so that would be a clause in one of those agreements. And it could be the same clause in both agreements. So it's a clause in the agreement, so it would not interfere with at will, but it's just a justification of that the trust was broken in this, if that should be violated. That if someone shares your system or shares clients or takes a client, then that trust is broken, right? You probably don't want that person around anyway. But also, but also it shows boundaries, and it's also you have to be an example to the rest of your team. That if
Right.
you're not maintaining your boundaries or maintaining your contracts, and if someone else, if the team sees this, then they're like, well, why? What's the point of signing? Or I could do the same thing if they can get away with it.
Absolutely. That's very true. You have to have the consequences, and it has to be applied across the board. What do you see in terms of social media? Like, is that like in terms of like employees going on social media, does that affect the brand, like whatever they post, or can you do something about it to protect your brand on social media as well? Or is that something that you can't really do anything about?
No, well, yes, you can. I would say yes if you want to monitor people, or you're monitoring your what is it, your hashtags. So you're monitoring your, if anybody tags you or if employee tags, so you're paying attention to that. You can pay attention to what, and it's kind of the example of um sometimes I think about the teachers that had the, what is it, the website, the extracurricular, their own website going on, but they were teachers and their school district fired them because of what they were doing outside of that, because it did not align with the teaching community. You gotta think in lines of what your values are, the business owner, and when you bring people onto your team internally, you want to be aligned with your values. The
That's
same
true.
kind of goes for what they're doing on the outside. So everyone has their own life and own activities, but there are, you would know, you get that this doesn't, I don't want to be associated with this, and that kind of goes with
Well, it goes with
per
everything you just
people.
said of just creating the brand and knowing. I mean, that's what I was thinking. We are going into all this what if, but you do have to protect yourself. But on the other hand, you also have to make sure that you hire correctly, that you brand your brand correctly, that you are associated with people that you really want to have as part of your brand. So that's absolutely. Barati, this question, I mean, I know that I get approached a lot in terms of the AI, right? I mean, we live in an AI era. Yeah. So what is that? Tell us immediately. I'm not even going to ask the question, like where does your mind go when I say AI?
Oh, I'm excited about it. I'm a learner. So my number one Clifton strength is learner. So I've just entered the zone that I've already was there, that I could have unending learning, but it's unending with AI. So it's just another tool for me to learn. I am embracing it, and how I am using it. The goal that I've told my team is that we are to get 75% automated. Why? One reason how I see this is because now we get to spend more time with humans.
That's very true.
Now we get to spend, now I get to spend more time. If I can automate these emails and I don't have to send every single email and make sure all the emails are done, then now I have more time to spend with humans. Now I can show up at more events. I have been showing up at more events now. My team, my intern went with me to an event today because we have an AI receptionist. So I have someone answering the phone. And so now we will develop more AI employees. The receptionist was our first AI employee. Her name is Daryl, and she answers my calls. And so we're gonna have AI employees. I'm incorporating more automations. There will be more triggers and things happening. My new website just launched today, so there are things gonna be happening with that. And so I'm excited. I'm really excited about it.
I'm with you. I'm a learner as well, lifelong learner. I just came back from an AI collective. We are embracing AI. I was wondering if AI and intellectual property, if that made any difference. Maybe not, maybe yes, no, or indifferent, no.
Yeah, I think it is making it tougher to identify the human element. And right now it's still being evaluated, especially with copyright laws, is still under evaluation on what the future will look like for that. What I would recommend, and what I recommend to my clients, and I recommend to your audience, is to whatever they create, to start keeping a log of it, keeping a database, meaning a Google sheet, a Google Doc with what they created, when they created it, and where it is. So for example, the website domain is a perfect example. I created this on this date. This is where, this is the domain name. I came up with this slogan. I used it on this page on Instagram. I used it in this marketing piece on this date. Start keeping, you should have that anyway, but you need to start keeping that because now we have AI that can search. And so if it's searching and it comes up in someone else's search, someone else will like, oh, that's great, I'm going to use that. But you have documentation.
Right.
That you've used it. So I highly recommend that people start doing that.
Yes, I think that's a great advice. So thank you for that. Tenicia, it's amazing your wealth of information and how much you care about entrepreneurs and want to help them. If somebody wants to reach out to you, our listeners, I encourage all of them to reach out to you. How can they get a hold of you and talk to your wonderful AI receptionist?
Oh, okay. So they can talk to the wonderful AI receptionist who will get in contact with me also at 313-631-6967. That is our phone number, or they can visit me at mouldenlaw.com, and Moulden is MOULDENLAW.com, and that's my website. And so they get to see the fancy new website. It's still shiny, still sparkling.
That is amazing. Well, Tenicia, that has been a wonderful interview. You're full of life, full of information, full of knowledge, and you're definitely passionate about what you do. So I encourage our listeners to visit your shiny new website, call, email, get in touch with you and ask any other questions that they might have. And thank you again for being a guest on this podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.